All right. So, what I want to talk a little bit about in this lecture is about how modular modeling works in games, right? And that's a big keyword. So, we already went through some basics in Unreal where we kind of built out a landscape, we added some trees. And then for your final games, some people don't even use that stuff, but a lot of companies do because it speeds up workflow. But what we're going to get into this is we're going to talk a little bit about how we can break down or understand or analyze the way environments are made for games. So if we look at this first image from Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario World, I think 3D, what is the most repetitive thing that's inside of this? Well, I see that there's these little mountains here, and then there's a variation, which is this one here. And what essentially is happening here is they'll model just one of these hills in prototype format, and they'll literally just keep duplicating it with some small texture variations. And a lot of times you don't notice it because you're running through the game or the level itself. And you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. There's a little bit of color difference, there's shadow, so these must be different objects. And it just sort of tricks the mind. Here we have Bioshock Infinite, and you'll notice that there's a lot of repetition. And again, the reason a lot of this happens inside of games is because it saves on memory if you only have one model and texture and then you're just duplicating it around. So this helps with performance and things like that. If they were to make each piece of this like big open world kind of game unique, you would fall into a little bit of an issue where just the game engine couldn't handle it, the console couldn't handle it, sometimes the PCs couldn't handle it. So you'll see down that, for example, these two front pillars here that are framing the statue here, which is the most important, right? Like all of this leading down, which is pretty good shape language, pretty good, a good use of the golden rule about drawing your attention to where the player needs to go. But these are exactly the same. They're literally the same model duplicated. Then within this, you'll see that even the sides of these models are the same. So what they did is they really just modeled and textured one side of this and they flipped it and duplicated it. So this little window here is the same as this window, which is the same as this window, which is the same as this. Same thing with this arch. And then you look over at this building and you're like, oh, look, that window's the same as this one. Same thing with this arch here. And even in here, this could pretty much be symmetrical. So they maybe just modeled one half of the window and then flipped it. Same thing with this, they modeled one pillar and duplicated it around. And then later they might do something where they play with the ambient occlusion, which we're going to be playing with too, which is a post-processing filter, where it adds like little shadows between each object. And that also helps to build out, to make it not look so uniform. Here's another example. This is the delicatessen that's behind him. If we look at this, you can see these umbrellas are the same. These posts are the same. Again, they probably just cut this post in half and then flipped it. So just ways of being more performant, right? And a lot of times they'll use the exact same decal within two different buildings, and they'll just do a little bit of a color swap or texture swap using something called vertex painting, which hopefully we'll be able to get to later. Now I want to show you, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go to Google Maps and I'm going to show you how this translates to the real world where this all comes from. All right, so here we are in Google Maps. Now, a trick that they used to do, the environment artists, when they were sort of getting, just sort of looking for things to model or practice, is they would go to Google Maps and they would type things like Paris. This is something that I would even do with them because I always wanted to improve. As a tech artist, you want to be an environment artist, a character artist, you want to improve all of those skills. So, for example, here's Paris. I don't know where in Paris. So I would grab my little guy in the right hand corner and I would just drop him somewhere. You can see here's a street in Paris. And Paris is just, despite what people might say about the cleanliness of it or whatever, it's pretty beautiful. And you find a corner to stand in and you just sort of look around. Now, the point of this is the world itself is pretty modular, right? So, say I want to practice modeling and I think this building is quite beautiful. These little concrete posts here were not hand carved, they were poured into a mold, and then that mold was duplicated across or around the building. So, even in the world itself, if you look around, it's pretty modular, right? Now you could use things called stencils or cards, which would, create this graffiti effect, like somebody had came and spray painted on this building, and then you'd apply that on top. But literally, I can get away with using this exact same window mold here, and just duplicating it here, 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 all the way around the building. Same thing with this window. I can pretty much model half of this and duplicate it all the way around the building. So you look at life, there's a lot of uniform cars, bicycles pretty much look the same. And it's just the little things where humans touch it, right? Where again, I think this building is so beautiful and I think this is damaging the glass, but I do think graffiti had some effect, right? So any place where a human touched it, like nature or grass, that's when it starts to make it look less static or broken, right? So, the weathering here could be a stencil or card, and that's really just a plane that's on there that has transparency where you could just paint these details. Shadows, highlights, the sun, the weathering here. They tried to get this graffiti off. Here's some art that was stuck inside of this shop, which is kind of nice. So you want to think about that as you're building out or doing your level. So what we'll do in the next video is we'll take a look at some concept art that we're going to be using for our island, and we'll take a look at how we can take that and do something called gray boxing, which is the second phase. The first phase is actually coming up with concept art. And so we'll look at where to download Blender, where to download PureRef, and then how we can gather reference.